Welcome, everybody, to The Reach. We have an incredibly exciting episode for you today, so you want to stay tuned for the whole thing. You want to let friends know, have them come and view, because we've got a dear friend on the other side of the planet right now. It's very late as we're filming his time, but a man that has seen so many incredible things. He and his wife and his family, and they are down under in the great nation of Australia. I want to welcome Stephen Macri. Pastor Steve, thank you for coming on. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Even though in the middle of the night, it's great to be with you guys at the start of your morning.
And I just can't help but think of not only when you launched, right before you launched, that moment that we had, the sit down, I believe it was in a Cracker Barrel restaurant, and then the joy of being able to bring over a Global Ventures team and work with you guys a few years back, and then really all that you guys have seen, just ministered in so many different capacities, not only all over Australia, but all over the South Pacific, and just seeing so many incredible things that God has done. Just take us through the journey of how you guys started, launched the ministry, and all that's unfolded, maybe since those early days to now. You guys have faithfully been serving, I know, since 2010, when you said Freedom Harvest Ministries International is going to be a go, and you went all in with it. And the rest is incredible history, but not just past history, incredible real-time history. I'd heard even yesterday you saw some amazing things that God did, but just walk us through a little bit of the journey.
Like you said, in 2010, we'd been called in 2006, and there was a build-up, to the actual launch in 2010. And you always, we made the commitment in basically like January of 2009. We made the commitment that no matter what, we're going that year, we're going to go. And then 2010, we actually departed. And when you come to what we were doing, we'd never been to Cairns, Queensland, Australia. We didn't know anybody here. We were just responding to the call. And, the challenge of that, of going to a place where you're really just breaking ground by moving your family, by giving up everything. So it was really just watching God make the way every step of the way. There was no opportunity for man or myself to really make it happen, because we never came and spied out the land or anything. We just packed up, sold everything we had, and got on an airplane with one-way tickets. Myself, my wife Rachel, our three kids, Jess, Hannah, and Matthew. Matthew was 6. Jessica was 14. It was Hannah was 11. It was just a big leap of faith. And then when you come, you have the realization that, all right, we're here. What do you want to do next, God? Because we've come. And again, you don't have any preconceived ideas even. You're just going, all right, we're feet on the ground, we're boots on the ground. So what are we going to do? And we actually started out with what we call outreaches here. We went to an indigenous community called Yarrabah and just started doing outdoor meetings, getting people to attend. By the kids would dress up as clowns, and you would really just whatever we could do to get the message out. And we never started in a set area in the sense of buildings, because we started out in the indigenous communities and we started out in the homeless shelters. So it wasn't a kind of grounded ministry in the sense of we're with churches. It was really just groundbreaking for us to go and see what God was going to use us to do in those areas.
And really, a lot of people may not realize this about Australia in general, but specifically what you guys, I know, began to discover quickly in the area there, North Queensland. Not too many are saved in Australia. A lot of people, Christians, this side of the world think, oh, Hillsong and Planet Shakers, and man, Australia is just basking in the glory. And That's not really the case, is it? And then some of what you guys began to find out, were people really focused on going much to the indigenous?
No. Definitely not that. And, just on that about everybody thinks Australia is saved, we're rejoicing because now 4% of the population, 4% of the 28 million people here in Australia believe that Jesus Christ is Lord. So that whole idea that all of Australia is saved, because we've heard it. Why would you even go? There's Hillsongs there. Well, Hillsongs won't even come to where we are. They say it's too remote for them to travel to this area. They can go all around the world and do what they're called to do, but up in this region, it's way more up to the individuals. And as far as going to the indigenous communities, people have gone before, but as a ministry, it's very difficult. There's a lot of travel involved to get to it because of the history of the way the communities were made. There is a resentment towards white Christians because the government used the church to round up the indigenous and place them in the communities, and there was stuff that definitely wasn't a great representation of God that went on. So you had to go and earn a way into speak into their lives. You couldn't just show up and just do something in the sense of going in and to a church or going into an area and go, hey, we're here and great, everybody's going to come out. It was quite the opposite. The first couple of times you show up, everyone, if you're standing in the east, they're all heading west. You know what I'm saying? They're not gathering to where you are. So it took a little bit of time to get the traction, to be trusted, to be able to share with them
Absolutely.
Christ, the real Christ Jesus, not the Jesus that was presented to them before.
What's so cool for the viewers, Stephen and Rachel and their family, as they began to reach out and go into the very regions that he's talking about, the areas that are very remote, very rugged. He took us into some of those areas, the GV team, and it was amazing the level of rapport that Stephen and Rachel had developed with the people. Share a little bit. I know you did some things naturally, strategically, to build that bridge, but then God just really moved through you guys supernaturally. And there were some amazing events. Share some of that, of how that happened.
The easiest way for us to have access and favor is for the miracle power, working power of God to be with us. And so to break ground, we started out in a community named Yarrabah, and then we went to a couple others, and we had a wonderful indigenous pastor who was assisting us. But it was when we really went to one community that we took you guys to, called Hope Vale. And when we arrived at that community, it was a situation happened. The food hadn't been trucked in, and there was nothing in the groceries. And we took a team of 14 or 15 with us. And we had enough of that first night. We had enough of a meal to feed the team of 15. And when we got there and we discovered that, I just told, Pastor Rachel was with me and we're in agreement, just feed the people in the community that were coming to the meeting, because we had been going for about 7 or 8 months. We'd been going up every 6 weeks to that community. So it was a repeated relationship building thing. And I think there was between 30 and 40 people that were coming, and plus our team of 15, so between 40 and 55 people. And I said, just feed everybody. And one of the team members that was with us, they said, well, how much do we put in the bowl? I said, every bowl full. Just fill up every bowl. I don't care. We had sliced bread, butter bread, give everybody 2 pieces of bread. I don't care till we run out. And so, and then our thing is, then you go be with the people. So we don't really monitor, we don't micromanage what's going on. Our thing is straight away you go to the people and have one-on-one ministry time with them. We don't wait for the actual meeting time to happen. Just get in there and show them the love of Jesus Christ. And then after a little bit, the team member that was over it per se, she comes up to me and she goes, what do we do with the leftovers? I'm like, what do you mean the leftovers? There's no way. There was just enough for that evening meal to be there. They said it never ran out. So I said, did everybody eat? And, and then I just started actually observing the crowd and the people that are around us. And yeah, everybody's bowls were full. It's that moment where, it's like Jesus feeding the 5,000. It just kept increasing, increasing, increasing. And when we poured the stew out of the pot back into the container, it was literally almost the same amount that was originally poured into it. So
Oh
it
my
was really
goodness.
cool,
Whoa.
But
Amazing.
yeah, it is. Praise God. And just out of that word travel, because 2 nights later, we were supposed to drive 830 kilometers inland from that area to an area we'd never been called Cohen. And they called ahead and said, look for that Pastor Steve in a blue Land Rover Discovery. He's coming your way. And because of that miracle, every step of the way, everywhere we went, they call it the Murray telegraph system. You tell one Murray, they tell all the Murrays. And so actually, by the time we arrived in that area, they were prepared for us. And so it made a way. Now, the miracle working power of God made way for us to be accepted, because they heard what happened in the other community and gave us avenue to minister in their community.
That is just awesome. The pattern that we saw in Acts really should have never shifted. It always was the power of the gospel, the power of his signs, his wonders confirming, his message shared, but also the messenger that, hey, this is someone I've sent to share good news. And boy, that story just so exemplifies that. I know you guys have seen other types of miracles, just to clarify for the viewers, because some people might be tuning in and saying, oh my goodness, same amount of soup in the pot poured out. How many would you say? And the amount was only enough really to feed, about 15 or so?
It was literally enough just to feed our team, and there was a team of 15, 14 or 15. It's a few years back now.
Yeah.
And then we ended up feeding between 45 and 55 people of the community and ourselves on top of that. So
Awesome.
probably 60 plus people ate out of thing for 15.
Man,
and there was left over to go back and refill the container.
It looked like roughly the same amount that you started out with.
Yeah.
Guys watching, I just got to say to all our friends and viewers, man, Jesus still multiplies loaves and fish. It might not be fish, but man, whatever is necessary, man, he still is blessing people and arresting people with his love and his goodness, so that they'll know that he's the one true and living God. Man, that's awesome. You guys have seen some really cool miracles of healing as well. And just to kind of segue with us being here 2021, having come through 2020, and now coming out of a pandemic, thank the Lord. Share with us some of the miracles you've seen throughout the years, but then as well, what was the atmosphere and the feeling of your area of Australia, and maybe other areas as well, the people that you work with? I know that stretches across, again, the South Pacific. What was the demeanor and what were the challenge points? I know when crazy things like this happen, there can be not only natural ailments, obviously, that hit people, but Great Depression, things, despair. What have you seen through the years, and then how did things frame up over the last 12 to 18 months for you guys?
As far as like coming here and being of the faith camp and believing in laying on hands and seeing the sick recover, we were all the unicorns of the region. There wasn't anybody preaching that. There wasn't anybody teaching that. And it was very difficult in the sense that you speak the way that we speak, and you'd have ministers saying, no, you can't talk like that because it's not going to happen. So you'd have those challenges of trying to break almost an oppression type thing of, no, we've never seen it, so it's not possible. And when it starts with the ministers and then goes through the people and into the communities, and and white, black, pink, purple, everybody. It wasn't like there was any who were of our ilk, if you want to say. There wasn't a lot of people championing that. And then when you'd have one or two miracles that happened, and we were really blessed, like our very first service here, July 4th, actually, in 2010, the miracle that kind of made people really start listening and taking note. I did a service in a township called Atherton, and they had asked me to go up and preach on faith and healing, which was like great, awesome.
Love it.
Can do that. And so, and you preach it, and you go on, and then you give opportunity, and the first guy up comes up, and he's got an oxygen bottle with him, and I'm like, all right, great, and what can we pray for? And he opens up his shirt, and he's got a fresh surgery where they've stapled him all up, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? He said, well, they removed a portion of my right lung, and I'm like, okay, cool. And he said, and all of my left lung. I'm like, okay. And he goes, and I said, what are we going to be in agreement for? He goes, I want brand new lungs. And I'm just like, what? You have that great faith moment. You know what I'm saying? That mighty You've been preaching faith for 45 minutes, and then somebody's like, boom, and it's like, where's the guy with the fever? You know what I'm saying? Where's the guy? He's missing a whole lung and a bit of another. And so we got in agreement. We prayed, and I had two other pastors of the area that were present. And then 3 days later, he had to go into the hospital here, and the pastor calls me up that was with him, going, they knew. Way more excited than what I'm telling you. And so at the hospital, he was having issues with the oxygen, and they realized he didn't need oxygen because he had 2 new lungs. And so that really, God just, that manifestation, that miracle just started making people around us question, what have we been taught? And so it was kind of like a roll-on effect from there. So we see pockets that have really, really changed, and you see pockets that have gradually changed. Like there was ministers that was like, yeah, all right, this happened, because it was so tangible. You can't deny somebody who's had a lung removed, and then there's a lung there, and he hasn't had a transplant.
That's amazing, and
so because it just set up the table to be able to minister.
It's just tremendous, and what Pastor Steve is describing there. Not only are you dealing with reaching people that are unreached or unevangelized, or might not really know much about not only Jesus but his healing power, but you're also dealing with the Christian world, even though it may be very small, that's existed for a long time, that is somewhat religious. And this isn't just his area of Australia. You can find this all over the place. Jesus dealt with it. But in certain pockets of the world, it can be just extra strength strong. And a miracle like that settles the issue. It instantly, people just have to outright choose to reject the power of God and reject the truth of what it's done. But many, many times there's those that are open-hearted enough, even though they've been religiousized one direction, that they're like, oh my goodness, everything I've heard all my life, that miracles were done away with, or that this died with the last quote unquote apostle of the Lamb. It's not true. It happened right here. And man, that's fabulous. God so established you guys in those early days. And I know that's we could probably hear scores, just that one miracle represents scores more you guys have seen just probably in the first few years of being on the ground and ministering. Bring it up to 2020, 2021 now, what you guys have experienced with COVID and all the craziness that's gone on, and just the state of affairs and condition of people and their hearts in this situation.
Yeah, COVID changed everything. 2020, things completely were flipped over to a degree because we're actually expanding out into more states and more regions of Australia. But once COVID hit, because our 6 states, Australia only has 6 states and 2 territories, but with the same landmass as the United States. The self-governing areas of them closed the borders, so you couldn't go from state to state. And then for about, I think it was 2 months or a little bit longer, you couldn't travel further than 50 kilometers from your home, which is about 30 miles. So we were very limited. So it changed all our weekly meetings. Part of our ministry is a weekly area for men's, which is called Fire Up Men's Ministry. So we would gather. So we went from being able to personally gather to now doing it all on Zoom. But it shows you how good God is, because now we have people who tune in from areas that are 10, 12, 13 hours away by car are tuning in. So we went more into the IT side of it, I guess, and we were able to start there. And with our loved women's programs and stuff like that, everything went more on Zoom. And we went more into the discipleship mode, because you couldn't go out and gather people and evangelize the lost, because our ethos is evangelize the lost, equip the believers, and encourage the ministers. So that's our core. That's what we want to do. So instead of being able to do the larger gatherings and the larger meetings, we started putting more into the individuals, disciple them to duplicate ourselves per se, so that they can go out in their areas and do more of it that way. We're starting to come out of that now. There's still, we just had a restriction put on in West Australia, for example. The whole state was locked down for 3 days over the weekend. No one could travel in and out of that state, flight or vehicle. So it's gone that way, and we're really focusing on that facet with this wonderful opportunity that God gave us. He kind of gave us a vision years ago where this Cairns would be a hub and we would go out. And we never really established the hub in the sense that we were a wheel that had many spokes with our ministry, because again, we're in the homeless shelters, we're in the indigenous communities, we're in the churches, we're white, black, we're doing everything, but we didn't have an established base. We're doing everything out of our house. And then September last year and all the COVID thing, God's like, well, now it's time to get the base going. And he took us to a building that was way out of our range and scope of anything. And so we started, and he said, this is your building. And we're like, okay, all right, another massive leap of faith. And we contacted the realtors and we went, and the price was just astronomical, because Australia, it's a little bit different than there. And so we tried to compromise and go, all right, we'll put in an offer for half the building. It's a 2-story building, and we're progressing that way. And they turned around and told us no on that. And we're like, okay. And then God said, just wait till after the holiday season and then go back. Long story short, we went back. We offered them less than what we offered for half the building for the whole building, and they accepted it.
That's awesome. Oh man, I tell you, these ministers truly have lived by faith, and we say Pastor Stephen and Pastor Rachel. That's very common in the nations of the earth, that title. But in all sincerity, our brother and our sister here really have an apostolic mantle and function. They're from Cairns to all over that whole region of the world. And I mean, from evangelism, children's ministry, while reaching out to the indigenous, to men and women's conferences, to pastoring and mentoring leaders, pastors, and other leadership gifts in the body of Christ. They actually have pastored in this journey, but they do so much in traveling, raising people up, walking in the power of God, miracle signs and wonders. They've seen the qualifying miracles and signs, as well as able teachers and preachers, both of them of the word, the qualifying tenets, if you will, of truly what an apostolic minister and ministry displays. And so it is so cool to see and hear this thing now going, brother, next level. I'm thrilled that you guys have this base, this hub of operation, and how things are going to be working in the near days ahead are really exciting. Uh, do you see hints of things opening up, or is it moment by moment like this shutdown that just happened in the West? Is there any indicator of things for Australia opening more soon?
Uh, it varies because every time there's somebody coughs and there's a COVID case, because we've only had like I think maybe 18 or 19 deaths from COVID in the entire country. We've not had that many actually have COVID because
You've
we're an
beaten it.
island.
Yeah, you've beaten
Yeah,
COVID. I mean, I haven't heard of any
yeah,
nation that's that low in deaths.
yeah. And like the region that we're in here in Cairns, I think over the whole period, I think we've had maybe 9 people who've had it, and they were all people who've flown in from other nations. We actually
Gotcha.
haven't had any local cases ourselves, and so it's really a fluid thing. I have no real vision of what's out ahead as far as even 3 months down the road kind of thing. With us, what we can control is what we're doing here locally. We kicked off our teaching course. We do what's called Friday Night Faith. We kicked that off last week. We had 4 churches represented
That
that
is
came to
that
it.
is
And so
tremendous.
we were actually able last Sunday, for the first time since the whole COVID pandemic hit, to go back to community. Um, and we went to Mossman, one of the communities that we took you guys to when you came with the Global Ventures team.
Yeah,
And again, for the first time since March last year. And we saw one man gave his heart to the Lord. We got to pray with many for just depression and stuff like that. So it's slowly increasing, but it's hard to say. Yeah, we got this concrete thing away from Cairns at the moment. With all the islands like Samoa, Fiji, Tonga, New Zealand, and the Cook Islands, all the nations that we would normally go to, we've just gotten I think they call it code blue notification that they're not going to allow anybody in who hasn't had the vaccine. Um, and Australia is saying if you fly into one of those nations, they won't guarantee that they'll let you come back into Australia.
gotcha.
So the international travel is still very difficult for us, because if you leave, you're still going to have to quarantine. Even if you do have the vaccine, you still have to quarantine for 2 weeks upon arrival into Australia, which is quite expensive as well. So
What's so beautiful, and
the
you just named several of the nations, but I know there's even other Vanuatu and uh,
Mhm.
several others. All the nations that Brother Steve just named, they have had a ministry presence, very active in and out of these nations, doing just, again, the works of heaven, expanding the kingdom. Is there any one story that stands out about, you've seen so much, but out in those areas, anything that just you'd love to share that would bless our viewers?
I think because you mentioned Vanuatu, and Vanuatu does have a special place in my heart because it took almost 17 years to get to Vanuatu for me. I had been trying a long backstory, and they have the largest cult on the face of the planet. They estimate there's a 58,000 people who are in what's called the John Frum cult. And it's a whole back history that I won't go into. So I had a desire uh, from 1999 that I was going to be able to go and share the light of Jesus Christ to the members of the John Frum cult. And in 2016, I was blessed to be able to go over to Vanuatu. And we got there, and I said, "Man, I really want to go preach to them." And people kind of tried to dissuade us from going because it's a cult. And 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 so on and so forth. And then I got one person who kind of is like, all right, I'll take you in, but you're not allowed to do anything unless the chief of that area of that cult says you're allowed to do anything. So we went in, we got permission, and and he said, all right, come back the next day. And so there was four of us. We went back the next day, and that's right. You can represent your Jesus, is what they actually said as well. So you start straight away. You just start sharing the gospel, and then you're like, we need the evidence, because they've had other missionaries come in. They've been evangelized. That if I was to name some people, you guys probably know who they were, and so they're very skeptical of it. And I'm like, again, you want the miracle power showing up. And there was
Yeah.
a gentleman with us, a young pastor, and he's like, man, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to lay hands on the sick and see them recover. He goes, I've never prayed for anybody. I said, I don't care, Josh. You pray for somebody to get healed so we get a breakthrough so they listen to the gospel even more so. And so he'd been traveling with me and he'd been around me for a little bit. And so he grabbed the person, he prayed for them, and they actually received healing. They had a dislocated kneecap, and he laid hands on the kneecap, popped right back in, because there's no hospitals where we are, there's no doctors where we are, there's no running water, no electricity. You're on the backside, and man, people started receiving Jesus. Again, it was that wonderful moment where you saw something you've been praying for 17 years, and then you see it come about, and again, by way of the miracle working power of God. So yeah, that's probably a favorite.
I
That's
love
yeah.
it. Man, if you're watching, just be stirred that if God puts something in your heart, just like Brother Steve said, if you won't let go of it, if you'll keep just taking those steps towards the call, the assignment of God, that thing that He's put, that destiny desire that's in your heart, God's going to bring it to pass. 17 years later, and God unveiled such incredible things to the largest cult in the world. I mean, off the charts, amazing. Steve, just here in closing out, what would you say the biggest passion of Steve and Rachel Macri would be? What's the biggest vision point of the ministry? What do you guys see? What do you desire?
The biggest vision point of the ministry, well, it'll always be to evangelize, our ethos, evangelize the lost, equip the saints, and encourage the ministers. It'll always remain to break down the walls that the kingdom of hell have established in the nations, and whether it be by doing it ourselves or equipping others to do it, it's just so necessary. So necessary to just get out of the box, get feet on the ground, get somebody out there believing that God's going to use them. Doesn't matter who it is. I know with our changing landscape, even within the ministry and within the family, Jess has joined you guys, so we know that life's always changing. But you want that core belief of just get them saved,
Yes.
filled with
Yes.
the Holy Spirit,
Come on.
get them and wind them up and let them go.
It's right on. And of course, Pastor Steve's referring to his oldest daughter had joined in a year and a half or so ago with us, come over and plugged in at Global Ventures. And it's been just awesome having her be here and co-laboring with us, and then getting to hear, how you guys are doing all these things. And I couldn't agree more about getting them saved first. And you said something about tearing down the walls that hell has tried to put up. Hell has tried to do that. And those three things that you named, winning the lost, equipping the believer, and then training pastors and leaders, it's supposed to all flow together. But some of those demonically strategic walls have been to segment and keep those different groupings separated, because if you don't have the pastors and leaders of the body focused on winning the lost aren't going to be won at the level God has really ordained on planet Earth. And if you don't have that happening, then the believers the equipping the believers, they're going to be equipped incompletely. If they don't have the Holy Spirit, if they don't understand the authority of the word, and then they don't understand what it's for, they're not going to know to go out and evangelize the remote areas or the indigenous or the person right next door. We're going to huddle instead of herald. And you guys have been such incredible examples of seeing all three of those things flow together in the continuity that God designed that so beautifully flows through your ministry, and doing it, exempling, modeling, going out and taking the believer, equipping them, seeing them go out, you leading the way, going out and winning the lost, and then raising up others to do so also. I just couldn't say enough about how you guys have gone after it, and just thrilled to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's been an honor. It's been an honor to partner with you guys, having you guys come over and do what you guys did in 2013. It's an honor to be used of God. You know, you never take it for granted. You never take the wonderful opportunities that are placed before us to be His representatives to ones who don't know Him. It's just a wonderful opportunity, and it's just, it's almost fun most of the time.
Well, I tell you, it was so just incredible locking arms back in 2013 with you guys, and in fact, that made one of my just cherished episodes of the Global Ventures reality TV show. We have a whole episode. If you as a viewer want to check out season 3, go and pull up the Australia episode. You'll see the adventures that we got to share in with Brother Steve and Sister Rachel Macri. Just incredible. Still one of my favorite collection pieces from all around the world is that didgeridoo you guys gave me. It's right back here over my shoulder. On occasion, I'll pick it up and people will hear the echo of an unusual sound through the halls of Global Ventures here. But we love you guys. Keep doing all that you're doing to change so many lives, raise up leaders, equip the body, and then reach the unreached the way you're doing. Keep it up. We love you all.
Yeah, thank you. We love you guys too.
And to all the viewers, just be encouraged. Don't think that you don't qualify. Just like Steve and Rachel Macri dared to step out and they set a date on what God's put in your heart, and just lock your faith in, set your face like flint to go after that date and that assignment like nobody's business, and step out and expect heaven to invade, heaven to back up what you do. Because when we obey God and going after the world, all of heaven backs us up. If you'll step out like they did, you'll see great and mighty things. God bless you. We look forward to next time with you. Bye-bye. We trust that you've enjoyed this time that we've had together, that you've been inspired and encouraged, and that you've seen a deeper way to go farther in the destiny design that God has on your life. If you've enjoyed, just subscribe to our YouTube channel, like it, share it with a friend, and we'll see you next time.